Hey everybody, I wanted to do a video today about Shakespeare, and I was recently having a conversation with Tina over at Lectito in Spain. Her channel, she's phenomenal. I've been doing a buddy read with her on Grapes of Wrath, but our conversation deviated and went over to Shakespeare because I was talking about what my kids and I were enjoying very lately. And we are on a Midsummer Night's Dream binge. And by binge, I mean we have watched the movie that was made in the 90s, I think 3 times in the last week, perhaps. We've read several of the different versions of the books that are picture illustrated, and they're starting to kind of absorb some of the lines. They have not actually read through the whole play themselves yet. They're not quite up to that level. I'll probably read it to them at some point, or we'll listen to it in the car again. But part of Shakespeare is not being scared. Like, I feel like English is not her native language. And so I was explaining, like, even for English speakers, Shakespeare can be pretty intimidating. I don't understand everything he says either. Neither does my husband. He finally got to watch the movie with us last night, and I would give him like a primer right before a part came up about what was going on. And he's a really smart guy. It's foreign to our ears because we're not used to talking like that. So my advice for Shakespeare is this: do not just start reading. This is the one time you do not just start reading. Okay, so this is how we do it. And another great resource, if you want to go in depth more, is How to Teach Your Children Shakespeare by Ken Ludwig. He also has done several podcasts with Read Aloud Revival with Sarah Mackenzie, if you want to listen there. He is phenomenal. I love this book. I haven't actually gotten to read it cover to cover yet, but he has some great advice as far as how to memorize Shakespeare, how to take it in, what passages are great ones to start with for kids, and he recommends starting with Midsummer Night's Dream. And I kind of agree because Midsummer Night's Dream is awesome. We actually started with Taming of the Shrew last year. And again, I did the same method as I'm going to tell you for Midsummer Night's Dream. First up, we got some picture book versions and we read through them. There's several really good ones. Okay, so I like getting one beautifully illustrated version at least. This one's done by Bruce Coville, and I think he's done several other ones. But the illustrations in here are just really fun. And I also explained to my kids before we started, and I think it's also good for adults to take note, Shakespeare thrives on misidentity, like plays within plays, confusion, yeah, people dressed up as different things. And so it is really hard if you're reading a script to kind of remember who is who, because sometimes they'll be talking to somebody with one name, even though that person is dressed up as somebody else. They're written as plays for a reason. It's better to watch them. I'm not saying don't read them. I'm just saying it's a lot harder to understand if you don't know a clear vision of who is who. So some great illustrated versions are a good way to start. This set, which we actually got from Costco, and I know is available online as well, is the Shakespeare Stories collection. And I think there's 12 or 15. They are done by Andrew Matthews and Tony Ross. And they have both comedies and tragedies in here. So this is Midsummer Night's Dream one. Look at the cover. Isn't it cute? And it's got several line illustrations, kind of in the style of Roald Dahl books, actually, which my boys also really love. It does have some of the little clips of dialogue that people might note or remember if they're familiar with Shakespeare. So does this version. And so that's kind of good. The more they kind of hear some of the big bits, they might recognize it when they're watching it or reading it later. But again, it'll give you a clear image of what is going on in the plot. And what I also like about this one, it has a cast list at the front. So you can see what everybody looks like, and it gives a little blip about that person and what their role is. Again, this is important because it's hard to keep track sometimes with Shakespeare. So once we read through those a couple of times, then I busted out our DVD that I have. Now, I've seen other versions online. You can generally find them on YouTube even. I know Amazon Prime has another version with Helen Mirren that we're going to try and watch at some point in the next week or so. But this one is my favorite, and it's the one with Michelle Pfeiffer and Stanley Tucci and Kevin Kline and several other people. It's so good. Now, I have an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old. They are not going to get some of the innuendo. That's another concern with parents or homeschoolers, that maybe there's too much sex in Shakespeare. Yes, there's a lot of sex in Shakespeare. There's a lot of innuendo. There might be some vulgarity because, yeah, that's what's funny sometimes. So, I already knew what was in it. I'd read the parents' guide. Again, if you are not sure about something, pre-watch it, read parents' guides. That's what they're there for. There is some nudity in this. I don't mind if my kids see backsides. They've seen plenty at the Art Institute. So for me, I'm like, the nude art is not a huge deal. Backsides were not a huge thing. You can kind of make, as an adult, note that there might be some things taking place that kids might miss out on. And again, like, there's one scene that I'm especially remembering where the, where Hermia and Lysander are kind of, he's wanting to make a move and she's saying, no, not yet. We're not married. And so there is a little bit of grabbing, caressing. My husband kind of gave me this side eye, like, what are you showing our kids? She talks to him about how they need to kind of sleep a little bit apart because she's trying to be a little bit more virtuous. I'm not going to go into a debate about sexual ethics right now. I'm just saying, if you're a parent, kind of keep that in concern. For me, I talked through it with my kids. They understood what was happening, but not in like a over explicit way, and that's fine. They're not, again, they're not going to get everything. I think the Amazon Video one with Helen Mirren is probably a little bit more tame. It was a stage production, so you can kind of, I don't know, see different versions and see what you think. When we did Taming of the Shrew, we watched the Elizabeth Taylor version with, I think Richard Burton's in that one. And we also did the musical version of Kiss Me Kate, which, again, that's pretty great. There's a PBS special called Shakespeare Uncovered where they have different actors and actresses talking about their roles in their Shakespeare plays that they enjoyed. This was also a really good intro for the kids. We got to see, apparently there was a Wild West version with Morgan Freeman as Petruchio in Taming of the Shrew. So that was kind of funny. They still ask about watching that little clip because they thought the Wild West was a perfect place for Taming of the Shrew. The great thing about Shakespeare, you can drop him in different places in time and he works. He just works. And you're always learning something new, getting something different, finding a new joke that you'd missed before. Yeah, there's a lot of double play with some meanings. So again, if you are reading through the book, talk about, you know, if you get to, I think they're talking about a lot of ass jokes in this because bottom turns into having a donkey head. And so I explained how ass can mean fool, but it could also mean donkey. I also explained about how we don't call people that. So you can kind of, yeah, get some different understandings of things. But the thing is, my kids are loving Shakespeare. My middle child said that Shakespeare is one of the funniest writers, if not the funniest, he's ever heard of. And both of them are quoting Shakespeare off the top of their head in random situations. My husband noted that my firstborn actually changed some of his sentence structures that were a little bit more Shakespearean style after we watched the movie. And so I think this is just a really good intro. My 2-year-old even gets excited. She says, Puck is on the turtle. Where's Puck? Where's Puck? Puck is her very favorite from Midsummer Night's Dream. And I think that the more grounding kids have with knowing that Shakespeare is not to be feared, the less likely they are to be intimidated as adults. And I think there's been several studies to show that people who read Shakespeare, know Shakespeare, you have more of a foundation for other literary elements. You have a great vocabulary, some turns of phrase that you might not otherwise have. So for me, it's been a phenomenal journey. I'm really excited to keep doing this with my kids. If Shakespeare is something that you are nervous about, these procedures, not procedures, these tactics would work for you too. I just think don't miss out on Shakespeare because you're afraid. Find a DVD. If you can find a live stage production, even better. But DVDs are really cheap. You can even borrow them from the library or rent them on Redbox or wherever. Just dive in and then work your way up into reading it because it's totally worth it. So I would love to hear from you. Do you guys do Shakespeare at your house? Are you nervous about him? Which plays are your favorite? What concerns do you have? Questions? Put them in the comments. Again, if you want, like, subscribe, share. I would love it. But yeah, especially comments. I love talking with you guys about what you think on things. So talk to you later. Bye.